I want to make sure that when we leave from here, we understand the purpose of the spiritual gifts that we all have. Okay? And the first thing I wanted to share with you is, if you would be so kind to open your Bibles, if you have them with you, your electronic devices, like I carry around, and it's becoming a habit now. I carry one of these to 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 10. New Testament, this is one of the Apostle Peter. If you be so kind to look at that, 1 Peter chapter 4, and if we go to verse 10, I want to start with telling you this, that the purpose of spiritual gifts is not for our benefit. And I want to share this with you because this is a very important truth. Just as each one has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of the varied grace of God. In other words, that right there is, every time, if you have received a gift, use it for the benefit of others, but do it diligently. Do it with good heart. And do it managing it adequately, so that when you're serving others, you're serving them with all your heart, without malice, with a single purpose, so that they can benefit of what you are giving them, whatever your gift is, they can benefit out of it. Not for your own personal gain and glory, but for the benefits of others, according to how God has dispersed those gifts to you. You see, when this takes shape, whenever you use your spiritual gifts for the benefit of others, this is one of the ways that the Holy Spirit displays God's power to each of us. And that only helps the others, but also helps to empower the entire church. That means every single one of you that's here. It empowers, the Holy Spirit empowers us, empowers God's power through each one of us as we help the entire church. See, there have been some teachings in the past and thinkings that when you get a gift, they think it is for your own benefit. It's for you. It's for you to explore and to use. But how are you going to explore it? How are you going to use it? The only way you can do it is by sharing it with others. See, it is for everybody else. It's not really to bless you. And this is why I really want to be careful so that everybody understands. When you receive these gifts, it's not to bless you. It's to bless others. And this is how God's power begins to empower you to be a blessing to others. So it's not, please, I want everybody to keep this in mind. You receive God's gifts not to bless you, but to bless others. The gift that God gives us is to bless other people, to bless the church, to help the entire church to move forward. In fact, spiritual gifts are meant to be used within the church to build every single one of us up. The purpose of spiritual gifts is also to produce maturity and stability in our church family. You know, probably most of us know of a believer who started right, came to the Lord, and somehow, some way, he lost his way. He stopped coming to church. He stopped believing. And next thing you know, he is moved by other different movements, religious, cults, and have moved them away from the righteous path of Christ. Unfortunately, this is because Christians around this person were not using their spiritual gifts to help him grow and become stable. The spiritual gifts produce maturity and stability in our families, in our church families. So when we use our gifts, it produces that maturity and the stability in the church family. In other words, it keeps us away from other teachings that will keep you away from Christ-like characters. You won't be easily moved away from church. You won't be easily moved away from Christ. And you all know that there is a lot of movements out there. I just saw a very sad, to me it was extremely sad, a preacher asking for people to come forward and bless her with money. Flat out. Listen, God's going to bless you if you start giving me $1,000 right now. I was like, whoa, wait a minute now. What's going on with this? And I remember these things in the past, but I didn't really pay attention to it. And she was talking about the spiritual gifts. So she was confusing her spiritual gift with her ability to convince people. And this is something I will talk to you guys about. The difference between a spiritual gift and a talent. And she goes on to say that her gifts, one of her spiritual gifts, is to assure whoever gives that kind of money that God was going to bless them 1,000-fold. I was like, oh my goodness, how terrible is this? And people were lining up, writing checks for $1,000. And I was very saddened to the point where all the $1,000 givers stopped going, and then she started calling for that $500 givers, and so on and so on and so on. And all that she kept saying was, the more you give, the more I'm going to make sure that God hears you. Because it's almost like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And there are people out there that have come to our churches and they have left because they have followed these type of teachings. And you know why they do it? Because because we don't exercise our spiritual gifts towards them. But just as the purpose of our spiritual gifts is to benefit others and to produce maturity and stability in our church family, we need to be very careful also about these spiritual gifts. We have to be cautious about them. Because, just like I said before, we can't confuse gifts with natural talents. We can't confuse them both. Some people think that because they have a talent to convince people and buying curvy vacuum cleaners, or to buy some sort of cookware, that means they have a spiritual gift. It's not. It's a talent. You can say, I'm a good salesman, but, that's just a vocational skill. That's an ability, but that's not a spiritual gift. There's a lot of people out here who have some great abilities. And I don't, by any means, I'm not going to, if I mention your name, it's not to offend you. Please keep that in mind. I'm going to give you a good example. Bianca's got great skills, office skills. She's always on top of things. That's a skill. That's not a gift. That's a skill. And there's other people out here that have gifts. They have skills to do other things. And unfortunately, there have been some cases where those have been confused with spiritual gifts. So I want to make sure we don't get them confused. So being a good salesman, for an example, that's a vocational skill. That's an ability. But it is not a spiritual gift. We cannot confuse gifts with the fruit of the Spirit. And I'm sure most of us know at least one or two of the fruit of the Spirit. If you want to know what they are, if you don't know, if you can go into Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and verse 23. It shows you the fruit of the Spirit. And what I want to separate is that the fruit of the Spirit shows your maturity. Your gifts show you your ministry. The gifts of the Spirit are different from the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit shows my maturity. The gift shows my ministry. And this is extremely very important for us to separate. Why? Because the fruit of the Spirit is listed in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 3, which are love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and self-control. These are qualities which will show how mature you are in the Lord. If you know how to love, you have joy, you have peace, you have patience, you have gentleness, you have goodness, you have faith. Those are qualities. Those show you how mature you are in the Lord. But a person can have a spiritual gift and be spiritually immature. Did you know that? People can have spiritual gifts and be spiritually immature. When you become a Christian and you have a spiritual gift, and you may be gifted as a teacher, but you may not be mature enough to teach. You have to grow and develop it. You need both the fruit of the Spirit and the gift in your life in order for you to combine them and use them. Because I'm telling you, you could be a good teacher, but you can be very immature to teach. And you need them both. But you need to know the difference between both of them, because one, it shows you how mature you are, and the gifts shows you what ministry you have, what kind of ministry you need to lead. Let me give you another example, so that we don't confuse the gifts with the Christian's role, with the Christian role. For instance, shepherding or pastoring is a spiritual gift. Keep that in mind, please. Shepherding or pastoring is a spiritual gift. A pastor has the ability to care for the spiritual needs of other people. The gift of pastoring is different from the office role of being a pastor. Does that make sense? A pastoral role is to care for the spiritual needs of other people. The gift of pastoring is different from the office or the role of being a pastor. You know, for instance, I'll give you a good example. I have that pastoral gift because I'm able to relate with individuals. I'm able to provide them the spiritual needs, and they have. And this is something that for so many years, it didn't really quite fit in until I was preparing for this, and I brought this into mind that a pastor, in order for you to be a pastor, you need to have the gift of pastoring. In other words, a gift of leadership, teaching, encouraging individuals on a one-on-one basis. The ability to care for people, the ability to be able to provide their spiritual needs on a one-on-one basis, to be able to bring them into this, be able to relate with them, be able to teach them and guide them and show them the way. That's what a pastor does. That's a gift. That is a gift. When you're able to relate with others and you're able to lead them and you're able to teach them and you're able to comfort them, and you're able to provide whatever they need spiritually. That's what a pastor does. But there's other people, but besides of that, the office role of a pastor is completely different. To be very honest with you, when it comes to the office thing, I'm not very good. But there are others that are very well talented to be able to keep everything in mind. I try to schedule myself as best as possible, but I always have problems. But you put me in front of a person that's in need of a spiritual need, I'm there. And I'm able to bring them comfort. I'm able to bring them hope. I'm able to bring them out wherever they feel that they're slumping. And that goes for Pastor Joe. He's got that gift. Where he's a people magnet. Everybody draws to him. He's like, everything gravitates towards him. Everyone gravitates to him. Without any effort. Everybody goes to him. Because he's got that gift, and people see that. So he uses that gift that he's got as a pastoral role, and is able to provide it for other people. Gives it for whoever needs it. So the gifts and the fruit of the Spirit are whole two different things. And I want to make sure that everybody understands this, because as the fruit of the Spirit is to show you maturity, but your gifts is to show you what ministry you're supposed to be doing. Also, I wanted to share with you that to be aware of the gift projection tendency. What does that mean? It means expecting others to serve the way you do and have similar results. And I'm going to explain this to you. This is very common. I don't expect for any of you to preach like I do. But there's been some times where there are people that want to teach you how they do things, and then you have to do it by the numbers. You have to do it exactly like they do it, or else you're a failure. Does that make sense? However, this is exactly like at work. They'll teach you the theory of it, and then if that person is very into, I want to teach you like I do it, for a long time, there were people teaching them like they were taught how to do it, and they wanted the other people that were teaching do it by the number, exactly like that, or else they would get fired. Nowadays, they teach you theory, but they also teach you, listen, this is how I do it, but you have your own style of doing it. Because back in the day, because now, people can get sued for that. Because if you get fired because you're not doing it like the teacher taught you how to do it, exactly how they taught you how to do it, then you're no good for the company. And they fire you. So that's wrongfully termination. Just because you have a different style of doing things, that doesn't mean that you're going to be a failure. So, this is very common also in the church. When you expect other people to serve in the way you do and have similar results. And this caught my eye because I remember growing up, when we were growing up, Pastor Joe and I used to go out and evangelize down to Memorial Coliseum, where all the roses are at, and there's a lot of people, there's a little park. I remember that one time, I had someone told me this, that you need to speak, whoever you ran across to, you needed to convert them to Christ. And if you didn't do it, then you weren't spiritual enough to do it. Or you didn't have the gift to do it, or you weren't ready for it, you were incompetent. Or you just didn't say the right words. And that got me that came into my head, because this is very, very common within the church, that people expect to serve the way you want them to serve. And I want to tell you something, that here at Light and Life, we will teach you, we will show you how we will develop all the church members to do it. We will share it, and we'll take the gospel to the nations. We'll show you how to do it. And it's up to you to use your gift and your talents to take that message to others. But we won't make you a robot. We won't make you to say how I say it, because the way I say it, it brings results. No. Remember, I want everybody to know that you know what makes results. You know what the results. A fruitful result is when you preach the gospel, when you give that message of hope. That's how you are successful. Not how I say it, but how God is saying it through you, so that you serve others. That's how you can measure your success if you're impacting others. Not how I say it, not like some sort of formula invented by us. And there's something that's being debated all over the world, is that the 4 spiritual laws, the sinner's prayers. No, you know what it is? You know how you bring people to Christ? When you allow God to use your gifts to serve others, for the benefit of others. That's how you're able to bring people to Christ truthfully, when they are impacted by how you present it to them, how your heart in that moment is connected to God, and you're able to project the message to them, because the message that you're providing is for them. It's not for your benefit, it's for their own benefit. And this is really common and causes a lot of difficulty within the church. People are expecting other people to serve in the way you do and have similar results. People with the gift of mercy expect everybody else to be just as merciful. And this is one of the examples I want to also bring you, because in my case, as I go and speak to people who are chronically or terminally ill, my job is to bring them comfort, hope, and a truthful expectation about what's going to happen. But see, not everyone is able to do that. I asked some of my fellow peers, students over at Fuller, and they're like, I don't know how you do it, but I will never do that. And these are experienced pastors that have done some sort of grief counseling to others, to the church members, and they wouldn't step into a hospital. And if they do, it's because either they're being obligated to go, but truthfully, they wouldn't want to be in that situation. Well, they're actually, when you're touching someone's hands and they're taking their last breaths of life, or when you have a family conflict, trying to decide who's going to keep what, or who's going to make the decision of how we're going to care for the patient. And it is very difficult to deal with that. But it takes a humble, loving heart to understand what they're going through. But see, I don't expect everybody to be that way. If you have that gift of compassion, well, by all means, share it with people. But if you don't, just because you don't have it, don't set yourself up for it. Just because I do it, or just because Pastor Joe goes out with the LAPD and he's driving around there listening to these officers with their situations, that doesn't mean that everybody it's a good listener and able to comprehend and sympathize with them. And the same goes to my case. There's other ways that you can collaborate and be able to serve others and project God's grace towards them. I don't expect, and I don't expect from all of you to do what I do. But if you have that gift of compassion, use it. But I don't expect it to do it just because I tell you, because the way I'm going to teach you to do it, if you want to learn from it. I don't expect you to do it like the way I do it. Because maybe your approach might be more sensitive. It might be completely different. And I don't expect you to do it like I do it. But there is those who teach that. They expect people to use it, to do it the way they teach you how to do it. So, in my case, the gift of mercy, I don't expect it to do it like I do it. Or for another example, people with the gift of prophecy, the people with the gift of prophecy are very confrontive, and sometimes that can be misused and confused. And I've heard this before. And please, don't take offense. And I've heard this, and this is very common in the Latin communities. The Lord told me, and they recite Psalm 100. And the Lord told me, they read chapter 28, Matthew 28. Or they'll recite, or they'll say, the Lord just spoke to me and said this. And they're reciting the first Bible verse they come up and it comes into their mind. It's very difficult to talk to these people because they feel like the Lord really has spoken to them, and they become very confrontive. And they expect people to listen. When God will speak to you, God will speak to you into your heart and will tell you. And there are people who have the gifts of prophecy, and these people are very, very, very uncommon to hear. But there are some people, they think they have the gift of prophecy, and they'll speak out, and all they will say is a Bible verse. And sometimes it's very difficult to understand these people because they feel like whatever they're saying, God really spoke to them. But you need to be very careful with these things. You know when God will speak to you. You know because the Holy Spirit will convict you like you couldn't believe. The Holy Spirit will come down on you and speak to you directly. I'm not saying that there's no need for these people who have the gift of prophecy. We need them. Because sometimes we need to hear God, it's a manifestation of what God is doing in our lives, or in this case for the whole church. But in some cases, people expect for you to do those things exactly how they say it, and sometimes it doesn't even make sense. Here in life, we don't expect you guys to do that. What we expect is for you to to use your own gift and use it for the benefit of others. And we need to be very careful with this. Very extremely careful. Lastly, I want to share with you is that don't feel that your gifts are superiors to others, because they're neither superior or inferior. All the gifts that you have are meant for one purpose, is to glorify God and to serve others. Every single gift that you have, that you've encountered, you've explored, and they're not bigger than the other. They're all the same. They're just being utilized differently. But they all have the same caliber. Whether you have the gift of pastor, or you have the ministry of being a pastor, whether you speak in tongues, whether you serve, they're in the same level and caliber than every other gift. Realize that using our gifts without love is worthless. And I'm reciting 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I may be able to speak languages of men and even of angels. I may have the gift of inspired preaching. I may have all the knowledge and all the faith to move mountains. But if I have not love, I'm nothing. It is worthless. It does not do any good to anyone. So if you feel like the gifts might make you feel superior than the others, then that's the wrong thing for you to feel. Because without love, it's worthless. It is worthless. And lastly, recognize that we all have both a primary and a secondary ministry in our church. Our primary ministry should be committed in the area where I'm gifted at. And my secondary ministry should include serving any other area of the body where I'm needed. Does that make sense? Your primary ministry is where you're gifted, and your secondary is where you need it, where you are needed. The Bible says that our people must learn to help all who need their assistance so that their lives will be fruitful. And just because you feel that I'm not gifted in areas, it doesn't mean you can't do things. In the contrary, you can. Just because you're not gifted as a pastor, that doesn't mean you can't do a pastoral role. On the contrary, if you're needed to bring comfort to someone, oh, by all means, you go to that person. If you feel like you can't give someone a teaching, if you feel like you can't teach because that's not your gift of teaching, oh, by all means, please, you go for it. If you're needed, you go and take care of it. Sometimes you may surprise yourself that maybe because you're not a gifted teacher, that doesn't mean you can't teach. Just because you're not a gifted pastor, you don't have a pastoral role, a pastoral name, that doesn't mean you can't be a pastor. If you're able to provide comfort, if you're able to provide those words of peace and love to those, and assurance to that person, oh, by all means, you give it to them. Just because you don't feel, just because you don't have the title of a pastor, that doesn't mean you can't be. You just need to understand that what's your primary ministry and your secondary ministry. Your primary is where you're gifted at. Pastor, teaching, evangelist, missionary, you name it. But you also need to understand where your secondary ministry would be is where you're needed. Will it be in the kitchen? Will it be ushering kids? Will it be visiting the elder? Whether you're visiting the sick? You'd be surprised how comforting it is when you visit the ill, when you visit our elders. It will bring you to a reality of when someone told me this, when I asked the question, so if you know if your mother or father are passing, what is the question? What is the number one question that comes into our minds? And this young man said, well, if my mom or dad are passing, that means I'm next. And when you do these things, when you visit, when you see these people, it will bring you to a reality of huge proportion. Because it will bring you to a reality that, yes, we are next. But unfortunately, we only see that. We don't see that the need of that person right then, that moment, it's crucial. That is Christ wants to use you so you can give that message to the person of hope. When there's no hope. When all they're doing is waiting for them to pass. And this is something that I was hoping that Brother Caesar would see, that when we go over to the assisted living, and so that you can see firsthand that the people that we're ministering to, they have no hope. They're done. And when we go there, we bring them a message of hope. But what kind of message of hope are we talking about? our eternal hope. That this is not the end. By being at assisted living is not the end of everything. It's not the end of their lives. It's just the transitional period for the best part of life, which is being with Christ. And down the road, I'm hoping that I'm able to talk to you about, this experience, that death is not a horrible and terrible thing. On the contrary, it's actually beautiful to know that we are bound for that, but we're so afraid of it. Hopefully down the road, I'll talk to you all about that, do a lecture on that, so that you understand what actually death is. It's not like Hollywood has presented it to us, in a very horrible way. It's actually a beautiful part of life that we need to understand it, but that's another topic for a different topic for a different discussion. Our people must learn to help all who need assistance, so that their lives will be fruitful. And that's what the spiritual gifts is about. They're about helping others. They're not for our benefit, but the benefit for others.